next up we have Andrea Robson she's the head of primary at St George's in Madrid. Now, Andrea has really turned things around and really stepped up the game in the last few months. So, Andrea, thank you for joining us, and thank you for stepping in and slightly changed agenda today. But shall I just hand straight over to you, because I know how in control you are.
So thank you very much, Lucy. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be here, and thank you to Lucy and Claire for inviting me this morning to share our journey at St George. As Lucy said, my name's Andrea Robson. I'm here in Madrid as head of primary, and this morning I'd just like to share with you the journey and the successes and our next steps for our supporting children with their learning. I would like to just really build on what Vicky and Mick were saying, and certainly my wholehearted agreement about that catch-up and how people were talking about it on the chat, ditching that concept of catch-up, because then you're forever playing that game and you're circling on that wheel of rat racing. And we have taken a slightly different approach this year at school. So I'm going to share my screen with you and just explain to you the things that we are doing with both our curriculum and in terms of assessment, and of course engaging the most important people, which is the children. So my internet is just thinking about that, and then we're going to move on. One of the things that we believe in, and I'm sure it's true for all of you as well, is the importance of the children in their learning and having children's engagement in their learning. We believe that all children can meet and exceed their potential. But one of the things we wanted to make sure of was that, building on the developments of our curriculum last year, was that we had identified pillars of learning, core pillars of learning, those fundamental important things that we believe children should learn. I know Mick was talking about prioritising those things that are really, truly important. So what we did was we spoke with all of our team, and we identified 5 pillars of learning. I'm just going to talk to you about what they are very quickly in maths, but we have established them for English as well. And we've talked about the importance of the numbers, the number system to place value. We've talked about their children's physical ability to count to 100, the properties of numbers, odd and even numbers, and of course one of my personal favourites, the times tables. Whether you love them or hate them, they're one of those key pillars of learning. The key thing about curriculum is that it is progressive, and it goes from A to B to C, D, E. And what we all know is that if children haven't mastered, if they're not really secure in those concepts that constitute A and B, by the time you get to C, D, E, F, they've completely lost it. And the gap between where they should be and where they are just continues to get wider and wider. And we wanted to get away from that sheep dip approach, because by the time you get to even to the end of the first term, you have very, very stressed teachers, you have quite, demoralised children, and the gaps are just getting bigger, and teachers feel powerless to help and support those children, and the children lose confidence in their ability to be confident learners. And Nick, you were talking about children being labelled. Children in year 2 saying, I can't do this, I'm no good at that, is absolutely heartbreaking and should never happen. So we identified these 5 core pillars of learning, and we made sure that every year group at an appropriate level was baselining these core concepts to make sure that children could count forwards and backwards to 100, to make sure that they had one-to-one correspondence, to make sure that they had those core skills. And we made those links between development matters, so the early years curriculum, and at year 6 level, we were then using and being advised by the year 7 teachers in terms of what was important for that transition from year 6 to year 7, and that move away from just core knowledge to those skills as well, to make sure that what they were going up into year 7 with was relevant and appropriate. we had quite a long conversation about long division. What is important? What do they need to be able to do? What do they need to be able to apply for when they go into year 7 next year? And we've had conversations about the relevant and the appropriateness, and we have descaled. We've scaled back quite a lot of the curriculum. My year 1 teacher said to me, I'm not really particularly interested if they can jump a 3/4 turn, Andrea. I want to know if they can count. And we've had those conversations throughout the term. So what we did was, using these core pillars, we restructured and broke down the curriculum, and we created a curriculum line. So we established in the first term, I did this for the teachers, and we wrote down basically by week 1, we're going to aim for this, by week 2, this. So we had a continuum, a curriculum line. This term, and what I did was I created a maths team. So there was a maths representative from each year group that I meet with weekly. And they were saying to me, right, we're ahead on this, bump this up, take this out, move this up. So they were having conversations where they were saying, this is not, we can't do this, we can do this, we're on track, we're falling behind. And this term, they created that kind of map. So they were in control of what was being taught when. And we were ditching things that weren't important. We then, if I can show you, we then were assessing children weekly, and I'll talk to you about that. We restructured our assessment systems. As Mick was saying, teachers know minute to minute where those children are. And they are the experts, and it is absolutely about trusting those teachers. So we set up on the progression charts, and I would like to say at this point, again, there was some talk on the chat about it, but Claire Maybe from Frog has been absolutely outstanding in supporting me scaffold those progression charts and giving me endless support, often in her annual leave as well. She's just been amazing. So a huge shout out to Frog for all their support over the last 18 months. So this here is a year 3 class. No, my apologies, they're my year 4s. So the blue line is the curriculum line, and it goes up to the end of term 2. The red line is the average cohort. So this is the entire year 4, the progress that they have made. And what you can see here is that our year 4s, right up to half term, were absolutely bang on. This is half term. Then they were making progress all the way up until the end of the Christmas term. There was some talk on the chat about snow days. The irony that our school was closed in Madrid due to the weather, not due to coronavirus. And then when we came back, you could see that the children were then continuing to make progress. What we did was we linked these to school levels. So the out of age band in blue here, working towards, and the at level. And you can see that consistently, the year 4 cohort, and I would just like to say Vicky was talking about the makeup of her school. At St George Madrid, we are 40% international, 60% Spanish speaking, and we are non-selective. So we have children from all abilities, including children with additional learning needs. So this information here includes the progress that all children are making in this cohort. So we then took that one step further, and we were able to track children's progress not only against the curriculum standard and against school levels, but also against, as you see this dark band here. So this is Daniel. They're all in the Frog family there. This is Daniel, and you can see that the red line is Daniel, and he has made excellent progress all throughout this year. So this is a success story. We can now measure Daniel's progress against the curriculum line, and you can see that there are periods where he's absolutely bang on, a little bit below, but there are times here where he has been exceeding where he is meant to be. And this has given us a huge amount of control, and the teachers having that control of the children's learning and being able to measure their progress. Now, in terms of data collection, what we had done this year was we had revised our school levels, and with the teachers' input, we have created consistent standards across the school so that they had far more control and far more consistency about what they were assessing and what each level meant. So together, we created a structural system of what colours meant what, linking to school levels so that we could report effectively to parents, but the teachers were in control. So we used these assessment standards on the Frog platform to then create responsive assessment. I'll just show you now from the teacher's point, this is what a view, this is what they can see. So if I show you the Year 4 cohort, the teachers were tracking weekly. Here you can see the broken down objectives from the curriculum when we were measuring those consistently across the whole school. However, as we all know, having all this data, having all this information, assessing weekly doesn't actually help us unless we're going to do something with it. So it's not what you've got, it's very much what you're going to do with it. So we use this to enable, when we saw children were not making the progress that we wanted them to make, that we were able to then respond effectively to their needs. We have a look at what this looks like for Daniel that we were looking at just now, and taking those pillars. You can see here that from Daniel's tracking, and here's an example of a success story, he has got all of those key concepts, all of those pillars of learning firmly embedded. And this has enabled Daniel to make effective progress right the way across the curriculum. Of course, these are the things that he is learning on. And there are, using this approach, we've had great success with children like Daniel. And I'll talk to you in a minute about the children that we were very concerned about and who were not making the progress, because it comes both sides. It's great to have those success stories, but it's also about how you're helping those children who are falling behind. From the children's point of view, in order to engage them in this process, we implemented last year something called the Big 50. Now, it's a Year 4 curriculum standard that children can learn their multiplication and division tables. And I in no way take credit for the Big 50, because it was something that was in my school and I had to pass when I was little, which was a very long time ago. But we implemented the Big 50, and what the children had to do was sit a big quiz on the times tables, and they were asked a question twice, and they were given a time limit. And the response from the children and the staff with this last year was absolutely fantastic, and children were gunning to pass their times tables. And as we know, it is one of those things that's absolutely imperative. If you haven't got your times tables, you can't master fractions or manipulate fractions or decimals or percentages or measures or even tell the time. And we had huge success with it. So we expanded that this year into core concepts involving number. So we had number certificates involving a Big 50 from even nursery, where they were getting certificates for counting to 10 all the way up to Year 6 that were only focused on those key elements, those pillars of learning. And let me just show you how that has worked in terms of the success that we've had with that. Excuse me. In terms of Year 4, if we take this shows very clearly where the children have succeeded. So these children with the 2 purple dashes, they have passed their Big 50 in number work and in the times tables. And they're going to sit one further one, which will be for fractions, decimals. And we feel this will give them that core grounding that they need to succeed. It was successful across the school, especially in this year group, where the teacher has taken passionate control of what we're going to be assessing, what we're going to have on the curriculum, and taking those things out. One thing we have taken out of the curriculum is analog time. If you look at the watches that children wear now, it's mainly a digital clock face. They're not particularly interested. And if you're looking at international and ways of telling the time, there are so many different ways of telling the time. So 25 past 2 or 10 to 6 doesn't make a lot of sense in an international context. So we have actually removed that, and we're only focusing on digital time. So for these children, it was a huge success, and they were very, very motivated to sit their certificates and go and go through that process. However, as we all know, it's not just those children that are succeeding that are a worry. In the database, this looks like a rather alarming list, but let me just explain to you what this is. This is the number of units on the curriculum where the children are either falling behind or have not been assessed for 2 weeks. So it was a very, very high standard. Now, as Vicky was saying and Mick was saying, you've got to trust your teachers. Any teacher, and I'm, around the world, you walk in, they will be able to pinpoint those children who are falling behind, who are struggling, and they will know exactly where those are. So this number is the number of sort of units where those children are falling behind. And our challenge at the moment is to reduce this list down. The list down at the bottom, we're not particularly worried about, 1 or 2. It was these children that we were particularly worried about. And so what we did was, in January, we started an intervention system. We are very, very lucky at the school because we have a very high level of support. So this little girl, Bea, the red line is Bea's progress, okay? The green line is the year 4 average cohort. That's their progress. And this is Bea's CAT target. You can see here that at the beginning of the year, when we were going through and identifying those pillars of learning and putting in scaffolded support, Bea, even here, was starting to struggle. At half term, she went up, but again, her progress was flatlining. So in January, what we did was we took the assistants because I didn't want to add anything more to the teachers' workload. The teachers, we also operate a hybrid learning system. So we've got children in class, socially distanced, wearing masks, very few manipulatives. It's very, very difficult, to be a teacher at the moment. And I think what teachers in my school and around the world are doing is absolutely incredible. What we did was we trained the assistants and we put in a very, very targeted support system. So we base support on going back to the pillars of learning, those key elements that children needed to learn. And the children were assigned a coach and they were taught how to play this game. It's based on something that I'm developing. And you can see here that the games are based rigorously on those core pillars of learning. And these games that the children were playing were very heavily scaffolded to help the children with those core concepts. So you can see here that Monica played this game 7 times and then had great success. She then, with the numbers, the next stage up, played it 3 times. And you can see that by scaffolding at the very lower end, she was then able to have big successes. I will show you another child. You'll hear something funny at the moment. This is the selected voice. So children can play this. There you are. This is a game that children can play in any language, and they can choose the computer voice as well. This is a little boy in year 2. Jeff at Christmas was struggling to count forwards and backwards to 10. And the concepts of odd and even numbers were proving very difficult. He was become very, very demoralized with his own learning, and his teacher was absolutely frantic about how to help him. So we gave Jeff a coach, and he went from within 4 weeks from learning numbers to 10, learning numbers to 100, odd, even, counting in 2s, 5s and 10s, and now he's making great progress on his multiplication tables. This concept of support is based on the assistants taking that control and meeting with those children. Bea has been on the app, and you can see here, we put her on a few weeks ago, and her progress has absolutely shot up. When we've got children from year 2 to year 6 that are taking part in this intervention system run by the assistants who are facilitating that role as a coach, and they're checking in with those children 3 times a week. And so far it has been incredibly successful. One of the things we have found, and this is something Vicky and Nick were talking about, that emotional well-being of the children. We have a child in year 4 called Adriana. Last year it was very difficult. We couldn't get hold of mum. It was the one child you want to speak to their parents. Were very difficult to get hold of. Adriana wasn't doing her homework. She's now got a coach working with them 3 times a week, running with this at home as well. And this child is bouncing. She's doing her homework every single day. She's telling me what she needs to work on. She's telling me what her next steps are. She's celebrating her successes. So it has been a very, very small success. And for me, what has been even more successful is now we're getting teachers saying, we're ready to take on something more, Andrea. I'm happy to take this on, and I'm going to work with a small group of children and coach them on that. So if we've started taking the, they're under so much pressure. We started with assistants one-to-one across the school. We're now rolling that out into small groups where the teacher will coach those children, and then we're going to start rolling that out even further so that we're training the teachers, and then we're going to use that to assess our online children. We're going to train the teachers how to create those games on the app so that they can have even greater control. Because for me, it's about giving the teachers the control over the curriculum, working at their speed, so we're not overloading them, but enabling those children to do what they can under very, very difficult circumstances. So the idea is that by the time we start school next year, children in the school will have all those key concepts firmly embedded, and we can roll out and carry on further. So I hope I haven't talked too much. And I'll hand back to Lucy now, but that's something that we've done, and we look forward to rolling it out and supporting more and more children and stopping that gap getting bigger and bigger. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you so much. Again, the chat there was lots of questions in the chat. I'm sure you'll see. I mean, the one thing that just to note here is the speed in which that you've put all of that rich information together to identify those gaps, to then plug those gaps. And I know you thanked Claire, but the school has put a tremendous amount of work in. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Lucy, is it possible for me to answer one question?
Yes, of course.
She's just asking about children who fail the Big 50 and becoming demoralised. I think that's absolutely key. The children don't sit those that quiz until they are fundamentally ready, and we're using those assessments and those protocols, and those children sit them when they are ready. And if they don't pass, what we do is we work out where they're making those mistakes. We work with them, we fix those mistakes, and then they sit it again. And I'm starting to work with a group of Year 6s who are sitting their ultimate number master using that coaching approach. And the certificates are not for all across the curriculum, they're just for those key elements. So it is a success system. Sorry, I'll stop talking now. Thank you.
No, thank you for asking. Thank you very much for answering that, Andrea. And I'll speak to you very soon.
Thank you.